Throughout history, countless questions have been asked about the stories that surround Noah, the man who built the ark and witnessed a world transformed by the great flood. His tale is one of the most famous in all of Scripture, yet the account preserved in Genesis leaves us with mysteries that feel unfinished. Ancient writings beyond the Bible hint that Noah may have left behind teachings, visions, or even a book now lost to time. The possibility that such a text once existed awakens a sense of wonder. What wisdom might have been preserved, and what secrets may have vanished with it. The Bible gives us glimpses of Noah's righteousness and his obedience, but little of his personal voice. We read of the flood, the covenant, and his role in saving creation, but we are left to imagine the details of his thoughts, his warnings to his generation, and his understanding of the world that perished beneath the waters. This silence has led many to search for answers in apocryphal books such as Enoch and Jubilees, which suggest that Noah was more than a builder of wood and pitch. He was also a man of vision, knowledge, and perhaps prophecy. The idea of a lost book belonging to Noah is not without support. Ancient Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions preserve hints that Noah carried wisdom far greater than what has survived in the biblical account. Some texts describe him as a teacher who instructed his sons, while others portray him as a prophet who warned his generation for decades. Such hints raise the possibility that writings once existed which captured his experiences, his teachings, and his understanding of God's covenant with humanity. If these writings ever existed, they may have explained mysteries that still puzzle us today. The true nature of the pre-flood world, the corruption that filled the earth, and the secrets of covenant that carried humanity into a new beginning. Imagine a scroll penned by Noah himself, describing what he saw, heard, and understood in the days leading up to the flood. Such a book would be one of the greatest treasures in human history, shedding light on one of the most dramatic moments ever recorded. Even without the physical book, echoes of Noah's wisdom continue to shape our understanding of faith and survival. His story calls us to see beyond destruction, to recognize that renewal is possible, and to trust that divine promises endure. The search for his lost writings is not only about uncovering history, but also about rediscovering meaning in our own time. If you find these explorations inspiring and would like to hear more about hidden mysteries, forgotten wisdom, and untold stories from Scripture, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Remember to like this video if it speaks to you and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps keep these stories alive and encourages us to continue uncovering the secrets of the past together. When ancient texts are examined closely, subtle hints appear suggesting that Noah may once have had writings attributed to him. These echoes surface in Jewish traditions, Christian commentaries, and Islamic narratives, each preserving fragments of memory that point towards something larger now missing. They do not hand us the book itself, but they stir curiosity about whether such a text was known in earlier generations. In rabbinic literature, Noah is often described as more than a man of obedience. Some traditions credit him with wisdom that extended into areas of law, morality, and even the workings of creation itself. Ancient rabbis sometimes hinted that Noah, much like Enoch before him, may have received heavenly instruction. This portrayal goes beyond the biblical description, implying that writings could have preserved what he learned. Whether these writings were ever formalized as a single scroll or passed down orally remains uncertain, yet the impression lingers that Noah carried knowledge not fully captured in Genesis. Early Christian writers also played a role in sustaining these whispers. Church fathers occasionally mentioned traditions about antediluvian patriarchs, sometimes connecting Noah to wisdom about the flood and the condition of the world before it. While the canonical scriptures remained their foundation, Their awareness of apocryphal and extra-biblical texts shows that the idea of Noah as a transmitter of wisdom was not foreign. The Book of Jubilees, for instance, portrays Noah offering prayers and teaching his descendants, fragments of a larger narrative that could hint at a broader written tradition. Islamic sources provide another fascinating perspective. Within the Quran, Noah is remembered not merely as a survivor, but as a prophet who preached for centuries, warning his people of the consequences of their corruption. Islamic tradition sometimes expands on this, suggesting he left guidance for his descendants after the flood. Such an image naturally raises the question, if Noah gave extended teachings, were they ever recorded? And if so, what became of them? Across these traditions, we see a shared respect for Noah as a man of profound understanding, someone who stood at the threshold of an old world destroyed and a new world beginning. The echoes we find in ancient writings resemble scattered fragments of a puzzle. They hint that stories, laws, or visions may once have been attributed to him, though now obscured by time and silence. Some scholars argue that references to Noah's wisdom were never meant to suggest a literal book, but rather a recognition of his role as a moral teacher. Yet the persistence of these references across diverse traditions makes the possibility of lost writings difficult to dismiss. If Enoch is remembered for a book, if Moses is remembered for the Torah, why would Noah, a patriarch who bridged two worlds, not also have writings associated with him? The idea of deliberate removal cannot be ignored. Religious history is filled with decisions about which texts were deemed safe for public reading and which were set aside. If Noah's writings contained details that challenged accepted doctrines or secrets too dangerous for common knowledge, they may have been intentionally excluded. This possibility fuels the imagination because it suggests that the silences in our sacred history were not accidental, but purposeful. Equally possible is that his book was simply lost to time. Ancient scrolls, fragile and vulnerable, rarely survived unless carefully copied and preserved. Fires, invasions, and neglect destroyed countless works of antiquity. Noah's writings, if they existed, may have been among those casualties. What remains are only the faintest references, shadows that remind us of a deeper story hidden beneath the text we have. The echoes of Noah's manuscript awaken both reverence and longing. They remind us that human knowledge of God's dealings with the world is always partial, that mysteries exist just beyond the words we possess. And they invite us to imagine what it would mean if those missing words were suddenly revealed, shedding light on the origins of humanity and the meaning of divine judgment and mercy. The Ark is remembered as one of the most iconic vessels in human history, a wooden structure built to preserve life during the Great Flood. Yet across centuries, many have wondered whether it carried more than just pairs of animals and Noah's family. Could it also have been a container of wisdom, a library of sorts, protecting sacred knowledge intended to restart civilization after the waters subsided? Ancient traditions sometimes portray the Ark in symbolic terms, not merely as a boat, but as a vessel of mysteries. If God had entrusted Noah with knowledge about the world before the flood, or guidance for life after it, it would have been fitting for that wisdom to be preserved within the Ark. The same hands that gathered animals and food might also have gathered scrolls, writings, or objects of instruction. If such things were placed inside, they would have journeyed across the waters alongside life itself. The Ark has long been a symbol of salvation, of God's preservation of creation. But it may also be seen as a bridge between two worlds, the old one that perished and the new one that emerged. As such, it becomes natural to imagine that the Ark preserved not only flesh and blood, but also the thoughts and revelations needed to guide humanity's new beginning. If Noah had writings, this would have been the perfect place for them to survive. The connection between divine knowledge and physical survival is deeply significant. Humanity needed both food and truth to endure. The flood may have swept away corruption, but it also erased much of what was known about the ancient world. By carrying sacred writings, Noah could have ensured that vital truths did not vanish along with the drowned civilizations. These texts might have included wisdom about creation, warnings about sin, or instructions for worship. In some traditions, the ark is even imagined as a container of technology or skills. Legends speak of knowledge given by God to the patriarchs, knowledge that could shape tools, calendars, or systems of order. If such knowledge had been corrupted before the flood by the fallen angels and their teachings, Noah's writings might have preserved a pure form of divine wisdom, protecting humanity from repeating the same errors. The idea of hidden knowledge aboard the ark also connects to broader myths around the world. In many flood stories outside the Bible, survivors often preserve not only life, but also secrets, treasures, or divine instructions. These parallels strengthen the idea that Noah's ark was not just a shelter, but a chest of mysteries that shaped the destiny of future generations. If the ark contained sacred writings, their fate after the flood remains an open question. Were they passed down carefully by Noah's sons? Were they hidden away, known only to a select few? Or did they eventually vanish, leaving only traces in traditions like the Book of Jubilees? The silence of history is as intriguing as the possibility itself. The symbolism of the ark as a carrier of hidden knowledge endures because it speaks to the human longing for wisdom in times of crisis. Just as Noah carried life through the waters, so too might he have carried divine truth through the chaos, ensuring that the new world began not in ignorance, but in remembrance of God's will. The ark, then, becomes more than wood and pitch. It becomes a library of hope, a vessel of truth sailing upon the flood of judgment. When most people think of Noah, they imagine a man with tools in his hands, building an ark piece by piece as the world mocked him. This image, while powerful, reduces him to a carpenter and survivor. Yet the deeper traditions reveal that Noah was far more than a builder. He was a prophet, chosen not only to save life, but to deliver messages, visions, and revelations that shaped humanity's understanding of God. In the biblical account, Noah is described as righteous in his generation, walking with God. This description places him in the company of the great prophets who received divine communication. He was not simply warned of a coming flood, he was entrusted with knowledge about judgment and redemption. This prophetic role is often overlooked, yet it is central to understanding his true significance. Prophets in Scripture are more than predictors of the future. They are interpreters of divine will, voices that call humanity back to truth. Noah fits this pattern. He warned his generation, even if they refused to listen, and he carried forward the message of God's covenant after the flood. His voice, like that of Isaiah or Jeremiah in later centuries, was one of both warning and hope. If he left writings, they may have included visions and revelations too profound to be spoken in a single lifetime. Traditions outside the Bible sometimes emphasize this prophetic side of Noah. In Jewish writings, he is remembered for teaching laws of righteousness. In Islamic tradition, he preached for centuries, tirelessly calling people to repent before the waters came. These portrayals highlight a man whose mission went far beyond carpentry. He was a prophet of endurance, speaking truth even when the world refused to change. The prophetic image of Noah also connects to his role in shaping humanity's understanding of covenant. After the flood, when the rainbow appeared, Noah received a sign of God's mercy. But what if his writings included further detail about this covenant, insights into how humanity was meant to live in harmony with God and creation? Such teachings would have been prophetic guidance for future generations, setting the moral foundation for civilization. As a prophet, Noah may have also received visions of the unseen world. Some traditions suggest he had knowledge of the heavens, of angels, and of spiritual realities beyond human sight. If so, his writings could have included descriptions of mysteries that echo those in the Book of Enoch, yet from his unique perspective. These visions might explain why his story resonates so strongly in multiple faith traditions, as if his voice carried an authority that could not be silenced by time. When we remember Noah only as a builder, we risk missing the depth of his calling. He was a man who spoke with God, who warned of judgment, who carried wisdom across the flood. His prophetic voice, if preserved in lost writings, would have been a guide for generations seeking to understand the meaning of survival, justice, and covenant. The image of Noah as prophet restores his dignity as more than a craftsman of wood. He was a craftsman of faith, shaping the foundation of human spirituality after the flood. His lost book, if it ever existed, may have been a collection of his prophecies, a testimony of a man who did not merely build an ark, but carried divine truth across the waters of destruction into the dawn of a new world. The world before the flood has long fascinated readers of ancient texts. Genesis gives only a brief account, mentioning that the earth was filled with violence and corruption, that giants called the Nephilim roamed the land, and that humanity's thoughts were bent toward evil continually. These short verses open the door to vast mysteries. What kind of civilization existed in those days, and what might Noah have known about it? If his writings once existed, they may have been eyewitness records of a world unlike anything we can imagine today. The notion of giants or mighty beings has puzzled generations. Some traditions portray them as offspring of unions between heavenly beings and human women, a corruption of creation itself. Such beings are hinted at in the Book of Genesis and explored further in the Book of Enoch. If Noah lived among them, his writings might have described their strength, their influence, and the chaos they brought into human society. This would not only explain the severity of the flood, but also preserve a record of an age now completely lost to history. Ancient traditions often suggest that the pre-flood world was rich with knowledge, but knowledge that had been twisted and corrupted. Skills in metalworking, sorcery, astrology, and forbidden sciences may have flourished during this period. Noah, being righteous and faithful, would have stood apart from such practices, yet he would have witnessed them all. His perspective, written down, would have carried immense weight, a testimony against the civilization that was swept away. Cities and structures may have dotted the earth in ways now erased. Legends from cultures across the world speak of great towers, sprawling cities, and advanced societies destroyed in cataclysmic floods. These stories, scattered among different peoples, could be distant echoes of the same event described in Genesis. Noah's book might have held the clearest description, giving future generations a glimpse into the achievements and errors of that ancient world. The moral corruption of humanity was also a central factor. Violence filled the earth, suggesting that wars, cruelty, and oppression dominated human life. Noah's writings may have described how justice was abandoned, how the weak suffered under the strong, and how humanity had turned its back on the Creator. His words could have painted a vivid picture of a society unraveling, a world ripe for judgment. The secrecy surrounding this period has fueled speculation for centuries. Why does the Bible say so little about it? Perhaps too much detail would have distracted later generations, or perhaps it was knowledge too dangerous to preserve in full. But if Noah had recorded these things, his book would have offered unparalleled insight into an era when human history reached its darkest moment. The flood was not only an act of judgment, but also a great act of mercy, preserving the possibility of a renewed humanity. Noah's testimony about the world before the flood would have carried both warning and hope. It would have reminded future generations that corruption has limits, that when evil becomes overwhelming, divine intervention steps in to cleanse and renew. If any part of his writings survived, they may have circulated in fragments among his descendants, shaping traditions, myths, and stories across the earth. Many flood legends from distant cultures may contain distorted echoes of what Noah once wrote. Though the details differ, the central memory of a great flood and a fallen civilization continues to link humanity to a shared, ancient past. The secrets of the pre-flood world remain hidden, but the thought of Noah's lost writings gives them a voice. They remind us that history is deeper than what the surviving texts reveal, and that beneath the silence of Scripture lies a story of mystery, darkness, and wisdom waiting to be uncovered. Among the most intriguing traditions surrounding the flood is the story of the Watchers, the fallen angels who descended to earth and taught forbidden knowledge to humanity. This story, detailed in the Book of Enoch and echoed in other writings, adds a deeper dimension to the corruption of the pre-flood world. If Noah had writings, they may have preserved first-hand accounts of how these beings influenced mankind and why their actions made the flood necessary. The Watchers are described as heavenly beings who abandoned their proper place and sought relationships with human women. Their union produced the Nephilim, the giants who spread violence and chaos across the earth. But beyond their offspring, the Watchers also passed down knowledge not meant for humanity. They taught the arts of sorcery, divination, weapon-making, and the manipulation of creation itself. This knowledge, though powerful, became destructive in human hands. Noah, living in this environment, would have witnessed the effects of these teachings. His writings might have described how humanity became consumed with pride, how technology and magic blurred the boundaries between divine order and human ambition. He may have recorded stories of leaders who ruled with cruelty, empowered by forbidden knowledge that gave them an advantage over others. Such descriptions would not only confirm the severity of human corruption, but also explain the necessity of wiping the slate clean. The link between fallen angels and human rebellion was powerful. The Watchers symbolized the refusal to accept divine boundaries, while humanity mirrored that rebellion by embracing the gifts they offered. If Noah wrote about this, his work would have contained a unique perspective, a righteous man recording the downfall of both spiritual beings and human societies. This would have been more than history. It would have been a warning for all generations about the danger of seeking wisdom apart from God. Later traditions preserved glimpses of this knowledge. Astrology, sorcery, and certain forms of divination were often condemned in biblical texts, perhaps because they were connected to the teachings of the Watchers. Noah's lost book may have explained this origin clearly, showing why such practices were dangerous and how they corrupted humanity before the flood. His testimony would have been invaluable for understanding the roots of idolatry and occultism that persisted in later ages. The Watchers also highlight the connection between heaven and earth, a theme central to ancient traditions. If Noah had writings, they might have described visions of angels, the battles between righteousness and rebellion, and the way divine justice responds to spiritual corruption. Such writings could have bridged the gap between the earthly struggles of humanity and the cosmic conflict unfolding in unseen realms. The flood itself can be understood as an answer to the corruption brought by the Watchers. By cleansing the earth, God restored balance to creation. Noah, as the survivor, would have been the ideal figure to record not only the destruction, but also the reason behind it. His writings may have preserved the truth that the flood was not random, but a response to specific acts of rebellion both in heaven and on earth. What makes this possibility so compelling is that fragments of these ideas remain even now. The Book of Enoch, though not included in the Bible, gives a detailed account of the Watchers. The Book of Jubilees also contains references. Early Christian writers were aware of these texts, and Islamic tradition preserves elements of the story as well. Could all of these be faint echoes of what Noah himself once recorded? If such writings existed, they would offer an unparalleled glimpse into the intersection of human and angelic history. They would reveal how the flood was not only about human sin, but about a cosmic struggle over creation itself. The Watchers and their forbidden teachings serve as a reminder that the world before the flood was far more complex and perilous than what Genesis alone describes. After the floodwaters receded and the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, the world stood silent and new. Noah and his family emerged into a cleansed creation, the air heavy with both relief and solemnity. It was at this moment that God established a covenant, marked by the rainbow, promising never again to destroy the earth with a flood. This covenant is central to Noah's story, yet it raises questions about what deeper instructions or revelations may have accompanied it. If Noah had writings, they may have contained a fuller record of the covenant and its meaning. The rainbow is remembered as a sign of mercy, a reminder that judgment, though severe, would not consume the earth again in the same way. But covenants in Scripture often include more than just signs. They contain obligations, instructions, and blessings meant to shape how humanity should live. Noah's lost writings might have recorded these details, preserving guidance for life after the flood. Jewish tradition sometimes speaks of the Noahide laws, a set of moral instructions believed to have been given to Noah and his descendants. These include commands against idolatry, murder, theft, and corruption, as well as respect for life and justice. Though the origin of these laws is debated, they reflect the idea that Noah carried forward a moral framework for all humanity. If such laws were part of his writings, they would have been a foundational text for human civilization after the flood. The covenant with Noah also emphasized humanity's relationship with creation. The command to respect blood, for instance, showed that life belonged to God alone. Noah's writings may have expanded on this theme, explaining how humanity was to care for the earth, treat animals with reverence, and live responsibly in a world restored by divine mercy. Such teachings would have been crucial for a generation starting anew after catastrophe. Beyond practical guidance, Noah's lost writings may have contained reflections on the meaning of covenant itself. He had witnessed both judgment and mercy, the destruction of the old world and the promise of a new one. His words may have explored the depth of God's faithfulness, the significance of divine promises, and the hope of a future shaped not by wrath, but by grace. This covenant also positioned Noah as more than a survivor. He became a mediator between God and humanity, the first figure after Adam to stand at the center of a covenant relationship. His writings could have preserved prayers, blessings, and teachings that expressed this unique role. They would have been a legacy not only for his children, but for all generations, reminding humanity of its bond with the Creator. The rainbow itself carries layers of symbolism that may have been explained more fully in Noah's writings. Across cultures, rainbows have often been seen as bridges between heaven and earth, signs of peace or divine presence. For Noah, the rainbow was a personal sign, a visible reminder that the chaos of the flood would not return. His reflections on this sign, if recorded, could have given future generations a deeper appreciation for its meaning. The covenant with Noah was not limited to his family. It was extended to all living creatures, a universal promise that embraced the entire earth. Noah's writings may have emphasized this inclusiveness, portraying God's care not just for humanity, but for every living thing. This vision would have set the foundation for understanding creation as a sacred trust, not merely a resource for human use. Speculation about these lost teachings underscores how little we truly know about what was given to Noah after the flood. The covenant we read in Genesis is powerful in its simplicity, but its brevity leaves room for wondering what more might have been said. Noah's lost book could have offered profound insights into morality, worship, and the purpose of human life in a renewed world. The covenant that survived the flood stands as one of the most hopeful moments in human history. Even without Noah's writings, its essence remains clear. Mercy triumphs over judgment, and life continues by divine promise. Yet the thought of what else Noah might have recorded, laws, visions, and reflections, reminds us that behind every covenant is a depth of wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. When Noah stepped out of the ark with his family, the future of humanity rested upon the shoulders of his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These men were not simply survivors. They were carriers of tradition, memory, and possibly sacred knowledge passed down from their father. If Noah had written a book, or if he transmitted wisdom orally, his sons would have been the first custodians of these teachings. The influence of their descendants across the nations hints that Noah's wisdom may have quietly shaped cultures far beyond the land of Israel. Shem has often been associated with righteousness and continuity of the divine covenant. Jewish tradition sometimes identifies him with Melchizedek, the priest-king who appears later in Genesis to bless Abraham. Whether or not this identification is literal, it reflects the belief that Shem inherited a spiritual mantle from Noah, one rooted in worship and the preservation of sacred knowledge. If Noah's writings survived, Shem would have been the natural guardian, ensuring that divine truths were handed down intact to future generations. Ham's story, on the other hand, carries a darker tone. His descendants became associated with nations that often opposed Israel. Some traditions suggest that Ham's actions after the flood marked him as a figure of rebellion. Yet even within this tension lies the possibility that Ham carried fragments of Noah's wisdom, though they may have been reshaped or distorted over time. The myths and legends of Africa and the Near East might hold echoes of his inheritance, altered but still linked to the knowledge of Noah. Japheth, whose descendants spread across Europe and parts of Asia, is often connected with the expansion of nations. Ancient traditions sometimes portray him as the ancestor of cultures that developed philosophy, science, and exploration. If Noah's teachings reached Japheth, they may have been preserved in a form that influenced mythologies of the Indo-European world. The flood legends of Greece, India, and other regions could be faint memories of Noah's wisdom, carried by Japheth's line. The spread of Noah's descendants across the earth naturally created a diffusion of knowledge. Different cultures preserved their own versions of flood stories, divine laws, and moral codes. While many of these tales differ in detail, their shared themes suggest a common origin. If Noah's sons each carried aspects of his teachings, they may have planted seeds of wisdom in distant lands, seeds that later grew into diverse religious and philosophical traditions. The concept of generational secrets adds another dimension to this story. Wisdom is often passed down not publicly, but privately, from father to son, guarded carefully so that it remains uncorrupted. Noah may have entrusted certain revelations only to Shem, while giving other insights to Japheth or Ham. These secrets could have been adapted by their descendants, becoming part of their cultural heritage, hidden within myths that at first glance seem disconnected from biblical tradition. Some scholars suggest that ancient libraries, such as those of Babylon or Nineveh, may have contained texts that drew indirectly from Noah's wisdom, preserved through Ham's line. Others argue that fragments of Noah's covenantal teachings survived in the traditions of Shem's descendants, forming the foundation of Hebrew law and worship. Meanwhile, echoes of Japheth's inheritance might be detected in Greek philosophies that sought to explain the order of the cosmos. The dispersion of Noah's sons highlights a fascinating truth. Wisdom, once released into the world, rarely disappears completely. Even if Noah's original writings were lost, pieces of his knowledge may have survived within the fabric of human culture. From legends of great floods to laws about morality and justice, the fingerprints of Noah's influence seem to linger across civilizations. The generational secrets of Shem, Ham, and Japheth remind us that the legacy of one man can ripple across millennia. What began within the ark may have traveled through families, nations, and myths, shaping the world in ways hidden yet enduring. The possibility that Noah's wisdom lives on through his sons' descendants opens a window into how divine truth, even when veiled, continues to guide humanity. The thought of Noah's writings being completely lost raises a profound question. Could such knowledge vanish forever, or might it be preserved in ways beyond human reach? Many mystical traditions suggest that sacred writings, even if destroyed on earth, are preserved in heaven, waiting for the right time to be revealed again. This concept of a heavenly archive has inspired generations to believe that the wisdom of Noah, and perhaps other patriarchs, remains safeguarded until its appointed moment. The idea of a hidden library of heaven appears in Jewish mysticism, Christian apocalyptic writings, and Islamic thought. In these traditions, heavenly tablets or divine scrolls record the deeds of humanity and the revelations of God. If Noah once had a book, it may now rest within this celestial collection, untouched by decay or human neglect. Such a vision brings comfort, suggesting that no divine truth is ever truly lost, even if it disappears from earthly hands. In the Book of Enoch, for example, heavenly beings are described as keepers of cosmic secrets written on tablets of heaven. These texts contain the history of the world, the future of nations, and the mysteries of creation. If Noah's writings were too valuable to be left to chance, perhaps they were drawn into this heavenly archive, awaiting a future moment when they will be unveiled to humanity once more. The concept of hidden wisdom preserved for the last generation appears often in apocalyptic thought. Some traditions suggest that in the final days, when corruption and chaos rise again, the secrets of the ancients will return to guide the faithful. Noah's writings, as a record of the pre-flood world and the covenant that followed, would be uniquely suited for such a purpose. They would remind humanity of the cost of rebellion and the mercy of renewal. This idea also resonates with the belief in sealed books, texts hidden until the right time. The prophet Daniel was told to seal up certain visions for the future, and the Book of Revelation speaks of scrolls waiting to be opened by the Lamb. Within this pattern, Noah's lost book could represent a treasure of wisdom intentionally withheld until a generation prepared to understand it emerges. The hidden library of heaven also symbolizes the eternal nature of divine truth. While human hands may burn scrolls and time may erase ink, what God reveals cannot be destroyed. Noah's wisdom, if entrusted to him by God, belongs to eternity. It may be absent from our shelves, but it may still exist in a higher realm, where it is preserved perfectly, awaiting the moment it will once again shape human understanding. The notion of heavenly preservation also connects to the universal longing for restoration. Humanity senses that what has been lost is not gone forever, but waiting to be found. This longing appears in myths of hidden treasures, forgotten scrolls, and ancient wisdom buried deep. Noah's book may serve as the archetype of such longing, representing the hope that divine knowledge is never wasted, but stored safely until it is needed again. If such a library exists, then the recovery of Noah's writings would not be through archaeology alone, but through revelation. At the right time, what has been hidden may be unveiled, and what humanity has forgotten may be remembered. The lost Book of Noah, preserved in the hidden library of heaven, would then return not as a curiosity, but as a vital message for a world facing its own flood of corruption. This vision stirs both wonder and expectation. It invites us to imagine a future where the voices of the ancient patriarchs speak again, where their testimony rises from silence, and where Noah's wisdom returns to guide humanity through the challenges of the last days. The hidden library of heaven, if real, may already hold the lost book, waiting quietly for the moment when it will be revealed. Though the idea of heavenly preservation inspires faith, the earthly search for Noah's writings has continued with determination. Scholars, archaeologists, and seekers of truth have long scoured the ruins of ancient civilizations, hoping to uncover fragments of lost wisdom. From the caves of Qumran to the libraries of Mesopotamia, every discovery raises the possibility that echoes of Noah's book may still be hidden beneath layers of time. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century rekindled this hope. Among the scrolls were texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, which, while not written by Noah himself, contained traditions closely connected to him. These discoveries proved that ancient writings could survive for millennia, waiting quietly for the right moment to emerge. If Enoch's voice could be preserved in forgotten caves, could Noah's writings also still be lying in wait somewhere? Archaeologists have also uncovered libraries in Mesopotamia, such as the famed library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, which contained thousands of clay tablets. Within these records are flood stories, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, bearing striking similarities to the biblical account of Noah. Though not identical, these parallels suggest that memories of the flood and perhaps fragments of Noah's wisdom survived outside the biblical tradition, scattered across cultures and preserved in mythic form. Some researchers believe that traditions about Noah may still be embedded in ancient texts not yet fully understood. Inscriptions, fragments, and half-deciphered languages may conceal references that link back to the patriarch and his teachings. The fascination with Noah's wisdom is not limited to scholars. Explorers have searched for the ark itself, hoping that within its remains might lie evidence of sacred objects or writings preserved through the flood. Though no definitive discovery has been made, the persistence of these quests reflects humanity's deep desire to connect with the ancient past and recover knowledge thought to be lost. Modern interest in Noah also extends to comparative mythology. Across the globe, stories of great floods exist in cultures as far apart as South America, China, and India. These legends may represent distorted memories of the same event, passed down through Noah's descendants. If this is the case, then each flood myth may contain a spark of Noah's original testimony, scattered like seeds across the world. In recent years, advances in technology have given new tools to this search. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and digital reconstruction allow researchers to explore remote regions and examine ancient texts in unprecedented detail. Every technological breakthrough increases the chance that something connected to Noah's wisdom might yet be discovered. The search for Noah's writings also carries spiritual significance. Even if no physical scroll is ever found, the pursuit itself reminds humanity of its longing for divine truth. The act of searching speaks to the heart's desire to recover what has been lost, to restore connection with wisdom that once guided our ancestors. It is as much a spiritual journey as it is an academic or archaeological one. What remains striking is that the memory of Noah continues to endure. Thousands of years after the flood, his story still inspires exploration, research, and speculation. The modern search for his wisdom is part of this legacy, a reminder that truth cannot be silenced by time. Whether hidden in caves, buried in ruins, or awaiting revelation from heaven, Noah's lost book continues to call to humanity, inviting us to keep seeking. When people think of Noah, they often imagine a man who lived thousands of years ago, separated from our world by an unimaginable span of time. Yet the possibility of his lost writings invites us to ask a personal question. If Noah could speak to our generation, what might he say? His words would not only echo warnings from the past, but also speak directly to the struggles we face now, in an age filled with its own corruption, violence, and uncertainty. Noah lived in a world overwhelmed by moral decay, a society that had embraced violence and forgotten the Creator. His story is not simply about a flood in ancient history, but about what happens when humanity turns away from truth. If his writings survived, they might warn us that when evil becomes unchecked, destruction follows. Such a message would resonate strongly in today's world, where injustice, greed, and conflict threaten to overwhelm communities and nations. Yet Noah's message would not be limited to warning. He was also a man of hope, someone who found favor with God in the darkest of times. His writings would likely remind us that even when the world seems lost, it is never beyond redemption. One voice, one act of obedience can preserve the future. To us, this would mean that the choices we make matter deeply, not only for ourselves, but for the generations that follow. Noah's writings may have also spoken about the importance of covenant, the bond between humanity and the Creator. The rainbow was a sign that life would continue, that judgment would not have the last word. If Noah expanded on this covenant, his words would remind us that mercy is stronger than wrath, that forgiveness remains possible even when the world appears beyond saving. This is a message desperately needed today, when many feel hopeless in the face of global crises. The possibility that Noah wrote about the pre-flood world would also hold lessons for us. If he described the corruption that led to destruction, those words would serve as a mirror for our time. We would be reminded that unchecked pride, pursuit of forbidden knowledge, and disregard for justice can lead humanity toward disaster. His testimony would warn us not to repeat the errors of the ancient world. At the same time, Noah might encourage us to seek wisdom that aligns with the Creator's design. Just as he resisted the influence of the Watchers and their forbidden teachings, he would remind us that not all knowledge leads to life. If Noah could speak today, his words might also carry encouragement. He would remind us that even in isolation, when the world seems against us, faithfulness matters. He endured ridicule while building the ark, yet his perseverance preserved humanity itself. His writings would inspire us to remain steadfast, even when the voices around us dismiss truth. Most of all, Noah's words would point us toward hope. The flood was not the end of humanity, but the beginning of a new chapter. His writings would tell us that renewal is always possible, that God's covenant endures, and that we are never beyond the reach of divine mercy. This timeless message would give strength to those who feel overwhelmed, assuring them that as long as there is life, there is also purpose. Though his book may be lost, the essence of what Noah would say still lingers in the story we have. His voice, carried through scripture and tradition, continues to call us to live with faith, righteousness, and hope. If his lost writings were ever uncovered, they would not introduce a foreign message, but deepen what we already know, that in the midst of judgment, mercy shines, and in the face of destruction, life is preserved. The story of the lost Book of Noah invites us into a journey of wonder, reminding us that the past still speaks and that mysteries remain hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Even if the scrolls of Noah never resurface, his legacy continues to guide us, showing that faithfulness, obedience, and hope are stronger than the corruption of any age. If this exploration has sparked your curiosity and inspired you, remember to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss future videos. Like this film to support the work, share it with those close to you so that they too can reflect on its message. And leave a comment below with your thoughts. Your voice matters in keeping this conversation alive and in spreading wisdom to others.